Now, before we continue, let's talk about Cerberus. He's the three-headed dog that guards the underworld. And every time I say that sentence, I have some questions. Because somebody looked at a normal dog and thought, what if it had more heads? And then somebody else said, how many? And he replied, 3. And then everybody agreed. Now, Cerberus belonged to Hades, which honestly makes sense. If anyone is going to own a three-headed dog, it's the god of the dead. Cerberus had one job: keep dead people in and keep living people out. Simple, effective, terrifying, and he was a very good boy at that. Now imagine trying to sneak past this thing. One head is sleeping, great. The other 2 heads are still working. Now let's pause for a second. Imagine taking Cerberus for a walk. One head wants to go left. The other head wants to go right. And one head says, squirrel! At some point, Hades is getting dragged through the underworld like somebody trying to walk 3 golden retrievers all at the same time. Now eventually, Hercules gets assigned the impossible task of capturing Cerberus, which sounds ridiculous because it is ridiculous. Imagine someone telling you, go get the guard dog of death, and your response is, okay, that's Hercules. The man who never encountered a bad idea and didn't say, challenge accepted. Somehow he succeeds, brings Cerberus back, shows him off, and then returns him, which means that Cerberus briefly becomes the world's least cooperative borrowed pet. Okay, now let's talk about the Hydra, the monster that somehow managed to make fighting harder by existing. The Hydra lived in a swamp, which actually tells you everything that you need to know. Nothing good ever starts with the phrase, deep in the swamp. The Hydra is a giant serpent, multiple heads, venomous teeth, poisonous blood, generally unpleasant. But the real problem was this: cut off one head, 2 grow back. Now, let's pause, because this is absolutely terrifying. Imagine fighting a monster and discovering your attacks are helping this animal get stronger. That's not a battle. That's negative progress. Honestly, the Hydra feels like a video game boss designed by someone who hates the players. Attack the monster becomes stronger. Try again, the monster becomes even stronger still. At some point, you're not winning. You're just trying to farm Hydra heads for XP. Eventually, Hercules is assigned the task of killing the Hydra, because Greek mythology sees an impossible problem and immediately calls Hercules. The man basically became Olympus's customer service department. Need a lion defeated? Call Hercules. Need a giant dog captured? Call Hercules. Need a swamp monster removed? That's a Hercules problem. Need help moving furniture? Probably still Hercules. Now, here's the surprising part. Hercules doesn't solve this with brute force. At least not entirely. After realizing the heads keep growing back, he and his nephew Aeolus start burning the stumps after each head is removed. No head, no regrowth, no problem. Which means one of the most famous victories in mythology was accomplished through teamwork and problem solving, a lessons that every teacher loves, but every student immediately ignores. Now, after defeating the Hydra, Hercules dips his arrows in its blood because apparently killing the monster wasn't enough. He wanted the bonus poison damage, and it turns out to be incredibly important later because those arrows become responsible for several future disasters. Greek mythology really loves consequences. Now, if you thought the Hydra was weird, meet the Chimera. Part lion, part goat, part snake, breathes fire, and somehow this made sense to somebody. I genuinely think that Greeks created some monsters by pulling random animals out of a bag. Lion? Sure. Goat? Why not? Snake? Absolutely. Fire? Obviously. And then somebody looked at the result and said, perfect. Now, imagine you're the first person to see a Chimera. You run back to town and somebody asks you, what happened? And you try explaining, It's a lion, okay, and a goat. What? And a snake. Now you're making things up. And it breathes fire too. At this point, nobody actually believes you. Eventually, the hero Bellerophon was assigned to kill the Chimera, which sounds difficult because it was. Fortunately, Bellerophon has Pegasus, the winged horse, and honestly, if you're going to fight a fire-breathing monster, bringing a flying horse seems like a solid plan. Can we take a moment and appreciate how unfair Pegasus is? Everyone else is walking, and Bellerophon shows up with air support. It's like bringing a jet to a sword fight. Completely unfair. Using Pegasus, Bellerophon attacks from above, eventually defeating the monster and becoming famous, which is great, until Bellerophon later develops a serious case of overconfidence. But that's for a future episode. For now, just remember, the Chimera existed because Greek mythology refused to choose one animal. Now, most monsters attack you physically. The Sphinx attacks you academically, and somehow that's more terrifying. The Sphinx had the body of a lion, the wings of a bird, and the face of a woman. An unhealthy obsession with riddles. This creature would stop travelers, ask a question, and if they got it wrong, things would end badly. Very badly. Now, this is the most famous riddle in mythology. What has one voice, walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? If you already know the answer, congratulations, you're doing better than most of ancient Greece. The answer is humanity. A baby crawls, an adult walks, and an elderly person uses a cane. Simple, elegant, deadly. Now imagine you're a hero in ancient Greece. You've spent your whole life training to become a hero. You've mastered combat. You've mastered archery. You've mastered sword fighting, athletics. Then a monster defeats you with a pop quiz. That's gotta be embarrassing. Eventually, Oedipus arrives, answers the riddle correctly, defeats the Sphinx. Now, the story of Oedipus becomes significantly less fun after this point. In fact, it becomes one of the most uncomfortable stories in mythology. But we're gonna save that disaster for another episode. And here's why the Sphinx matters in all of this. The Sphinx is fascinating because it represents something different. Not every challenge can be solved with strength. Sometimes you need intelligence. Sometimes the monster isn't testing your muscles, it's testing your brain. And honestly, the Greeks probably invented the Sphinx after somebody failed a really difficult exam.